Peppa put on an old record. The cheerful melody suddenly crackled and slowed down. Old songs remember more than words. Shadows stretched toward Peppa. On the TV, the silhouette of Mr. Melodious. A whisper from the speaker.
Peppa, George, onto the stage.
Black tar flows from the speaker. A thud from above. Child's room. The squeak of toys. A tentacle of tar burst out of the speaker. Peppa jumped back. The shadow of the turntable grew up to the ceiling in the shape of Melodious. The conductor calls the orchestra. Peppa ran upstairs. Tar was chasing her. The stairs rippled like water. Shadows of the railing. Tentacles. On the landing, Peppa looked back. Below stood Melodious. A flick of his spike. Drops of tar dripped from above. On the steps, distorted notes. Peppa burst into the nursery, slammed the door shut. Suddenly, a knock sounded. A refuge or a stage? George froze. Boys jerked in sync. Wallpaper, pulsating notes. The ceiling, hanging tentacles. George turned around. Black eyes. A mechanical smile. From his mouth, a distorted hum. Boys marched toward Peppa. The teddy bear clicked its jaws. Everyone in formation. The door opened. A ghostly mom. Her face blurred. Her mouth a howling melody. The conductor is pleased with new voices. Peppa rushed toward the door. Mom grabbed her with tentacle-like hands. George stood up and pulled Peppa inside as toys surrounded them. Tar sealed the window, the staircase, nursery walls, sheet music stands. The ceiling presses down. The conductor found his soloists. Tar bound Peppa tight. Melodious bowed deeply. Hollow eye sockets, crimson light. Melodious waved his spine. Mom and George opened their mouths, and a deafening howl erupted. Peppa twitched in rhythm. Tar covered her eyes. An endless game began. Miss Rabbit's pharmacy. Peppa walked in. The place was empty. Only the neon signs buzzed softly. Behind the counter stood a porcelain mannequin in a white coat, its face smooth and blank. Peppa approached the counter. Two black slits suddenly appeared on the mannequin's face. Thick black liquid oozed from its mouth. The mannequin reached out a hand. Peppa recoiled. The shelves trembled. Something was moving inside the medicine bottles. Tentacles crawled out from under the counter. They slithered toward Peppa. The pharmacist mannequin stepped out from behind the counter. Its movements were sharp and creaky. A grimace of pain formed on its smooth face. Peppa ran toward the storeroom. A vial fell from a shelf and shattered. From the puddle, black finger-like tentacles grew. Pharmacy storeroom. Darkness. The smell of medicine and rot. Peppa lit up the shelves with her flashlight. Boxes were stained with sticky black blotches. Bandages on the floor squirmed like snakes. The beam caught a figure sitting in the corner. Miss Rabbit, wrapped in sticky black bandages. Her eyes were crusted shut. Her mouth was sewn shut with thick black thread. Miss Rabbit's eyes snapped open. They were hollow black voids. Peppa dropped the flashlight. Tentacles from the bandages grabbed her leg. The pharmacist mannequin stood in the storeroom doorway, smiling. Peppa tore free and ran through the front hall. The bottles on the shelves burst open. Black shadows with red eyes crawled out. A chorus of hissing voices. Glass shattering everywhere. Peppa burst through the door and slammed it shut behind her. Pounding from the other side, the door trembled. She turned to the display window. The glass was coated on the inside with thick black fluid. In the reflection stood Peppa, but behind her, the clear silhouette of the pharmacist mannequin. A tentacle hand reaching toward Peppa's neck in the reflection. Real Peppa touched her neck. It was sticky. Peppa experienced terrible nightmares every night. She told her mother about them. Then her mother opened an old dusty jewelry box and found an ancient pendant. This is a magical thing. It protects children from bad dreams and evil creatures, she explained. Receiving the gift, Peppa immediately put it on before going to bed. But that night she was again haunted by a terrifying nightmare. In her dream, she saw George, who had turned into a disgusting monster with bulging eyes, long claws, and sharp teeth. Thick green slime dripped from George's mouth as he slowly approached her, emitting a disgusting hissing sound. In the morning, Peppa told her mother everything, but she remained indifferent, repeating that the pendant would definitely work. The next night, the nightmares grew stronger and more realistic. She found herself in a dark corridor of her house, dimly lit by flickering bulbs. Suddenly, the figure of her father appeared, but he had transformed into a huge pig monster with dark red eyes, a long neck, terrifying claws, and crooked teeth. The creature approached Peppa, growling loudly. Waking up in the middle of the night, Peppa discovered she was alone in her bedroom. Her father was gone. When Peppa tried to take off the jewelry, It suddenly came to life and began stretching out, transforming into a chain of countless eyes, mouths, and limbs trying to grab her with their tentacles. Terrified, Peppa screamed and ran into another room. There, she encountered George. His body had stretched into a shapeless mass covered with numerous toothed mouths and claws. Peppa shouted and ran into the living room. But there she was, met by George and her father. Peppa ran back to her room, trying to hide from them. Suddenly, the walls trembled. Furniture started moving on its own, and a voice from nowhere whispered,
"The pendant didn't protect you because I created it. I made it to lure you into a trap of eternal nightmares."
Horrified, Peppa saw her mother enter the room, but she was now covered with many eyes, hands, and legs, with a frightening, distorted grimace on her face. Peppa was about to run away when the door slammed shut. The lights went out. A heartbreaking scream escaped Peppa's lips as the monster's mocking laughter echoed around her. Peppa was standing by the gate. Suddenly, she heard a whisper with echoes of many voices. Peppa entered the garden. She approached the central apple tree. Its roots protruded from the ground. The branches of the tree suddenly jerked. They formed a huge gaping mouth in the trunk from which a growing whisper escaped. The leaves on the apple tree instantly turned black. They fell off, turning into black dust. Bare branches curled like bony fingers. They reached out to Peppa. She jumped back, looked around, and saw Grandma Pig walking straight toward the tree. Grandma Pig stopped in front of the mouth tree. A frozen smile was on her face. Her lips moved silently. Black tentacles, resembling roots, burst out of the ground and wrapped around Grandma's legs. They crawled higher, up to her waist. Slime left dark stains on her dress. Grandpa Pig stepped outside. He shouted and rushed toward Grandma. He grabbed her by the shoulders, trying to pull her away. New tentacles shot out from the tree's mouth. They wrapped around Grandpa's arms, neck, and torso. His eyes glazed over with horror. The mouth of the tree opened wider. The tentacles began pulling Grandma and Grandpa toward the trunk. Peppa tore herself away and ran through the garden toward the house. She slammed the door shut behind her and leaned against it, heart pounding wildly. The hallway was dark. Curtains on the windows were drawn tightly shut. Silence. Grandma was sitting on the sofa looking at Peppa. Her skin was gray and cracked like bark. Instead of hands, dry, gnarled branches. A faint whisper emanated from her mouth, part of the choir. Peppa ran to the kitchen. Grandpa was there, his body covered with black veins like roots. His eyes were glazed over and lifeless. Grandpa stepped forward. His root legs creaked on the floor. From a dark corner of the room came a screeching sound. Monstrous roots slowly emerged from a crack in the floor. A dense ball of black, shiny roots as thick as a hand. In its center glowed two dim red points like eyes. Peppa pressed herself against the locked front door as twisted figures of Grandma and Grandpa moved closer in front of her. The light inside flickered out. Only glowing red eyes of monster roots remained. The last thing Peppa heard were merging whispers of the choir, the voices of loved ones sounding louder than all others. Peppa was warming her hands by the fireplace. A family photo in a frame lay nearby. Papa's face in the photo turned. His eyes became coal black. A smile stretched across his face to his ears. Black drops were sliding down the glass of the frame. Peppa jumped up. She recoiled. The photo under the glass was pulsating. Dark liquid began to appear beneath the frame. Peppa grabbed the frame and ran to the attic. She opened an old chest, threw the photo inside, and slammed the lid shut. A dull thud sounded from inside the chest. Immediately, a second, louder thud followed. Shadows stirred on the walls. They merged into short figures with empty eye sockets. They moved toward the chest. Peppa descended into the basement for a flashlight. Damp stains on the walls were moving, taking on faces from the photo. Distorted, crying faces. In a far corner, an amorphous mass of black sludge and tangled shadows pulsed. Tentacles stretched from it toward the ceiling. Dozens of red eyes on the mass suddenly opened wide and stared at Peppa. Low, shadowy figures crawled out of the mass, creeping toward Peppa across the floor and walls. Peppa ran out of the basement. Standing before her was Daddy Pig, holding that very same frame. It its glass shattered, and inside, the photo had turned black, except for Peppa's silhouette. Black liquid was dripping from the frame onto the floor, sizzling as it hit. I found an old frame in the attic. Daddy's voice sounded metallic and lifeless. Peppa stepped back. Daddy dropped the frame. Black tentacles burst out of it, wrapping around Peppa's legs. Daddy's face began to melt, black drops streaming down as it turned into a shadow. A loud bubbling noise came from below. Suddenly, figures began emerging from darkness. They surrounded Peppa. Peppa pressed herself against a wall. Tentacles squeezed her legs. The shadowy figures approached. More clearly now, they were other family members, all with distorted faces like Daddy's. The black mask climbed up the walls, flooding onto the floor and reaching toward Peppa.